You unlock this benefit with the key of Patreon. Beyond is another dimension. A dimension of thought. A dimension of speculation. A dimension of mind. You're moving into a land of both waffle and substance. Of things and ideas. You've just crossed into the podcast zone. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Julian and I doing our trek through the Twilight Zone. We've been going from episode to episode, giving our thoughts and opinions on each episode in as little bite-sized chunks. And we have reached the fever. And ladies and gentlemen, you know what it's like. We all get the fever every now and then. So we're going to dive into this and see what we thought of this episode. So Julian, let's kick it off. What were your thoughts?
I think this is one of my least favorite episodes. It just seems so ham-fisted, and I respect what it's trying to do. It's 1959. It's addressing gambling addiction. That was usually came more from a sort of moralizing place. Not that this isn't like a sort of Christian, the moment you spin the wheel, the devil has your soul sort of perspective. Whereas this seems more from an addictive perspective. And I like that, but the episode itself doesn't work. What about you?
Yes, ham-fisted is a good word. Like, it's a good phrase for this because it's sort of like the protagonist, Franklin, is ham-fistedly grumpy and opposed to gambling from the out, and then is ham-fisted and sort of like angry about gambling and his addiction at the end. It's not subtle in its changes. It's not subtle in what happens. And then there's the hallucination of him being pursued by a slot machine down a corridor or something into the room. Is neither subtle or well done. And so it's sort of like, it's the episode itself feels like it's you say it's not moralizing, but it definitely feels like there's that part to it.
Yeah.
Like, it's not being judgmental, because it tries to give this sort of like thing of like, this can happen to anybody kind of thing, but it still feels like it's moralizing of sort of like, gambling addiction is bad sort of thing. But
well, I mean, I think like the slot machine, he hallucinates hearing it, calling his name, like Franklin. It sounds a little ridiculous. And it's clear that his wife isn't seeing it, and it opens the door to his room and kind of pushes him out the window. And he's dead at the end. And then I don't know if it's really there or he's hallucinating it in the parking lot. I guess he can't be hallucinating it. He's dead. But there is a version of this that could be good. He sort of, I like seeing it at the end, lit up, staring at, sort of gleefully at Franklin's body. And it sort of seems to me like, Franklin talks about how it's inhuman. It teases you, and ascribes these attributes to it. And there's a version of this in which like the slot machine is possessed, or it's like demonic. There's a demonic slot machine that like really relishes like, oh, I got one here. I'm really going to kill that Franklin. That I quite like, but this episode isn't really doing that.
No, and I think that would be a great episode. That's a much better episode. I mean, that's almost like the Mangler with like the Stephen King thing. Like it's that sort of like a machine being possessed, Ghost in the Machine kind of thing. But yeah, and I'd like that idea of like someone's about to walk away and it'll drop $1 or a quarter into the tray just to keep enticing them back.
Yeah, that's cool.
But like,
we're writing it right now.
Yeah. But and the way this episode's set up is about this guy Franklin, and one of the problems is like at no point is he sympathetic. Like when he starts, they've won this holiday. I think they've won this holiday to Vegas. Yeah. His wife won a competition, so they've gone to Vegas, and she's all giddy about it and excited. And it's understandably, it sounds like it's a great prize. And he's just sort of like really grumpy about it. Like, well, I've come to the holiday. It doesn't mean I'm going to enjoy it. If anything, I should be sat in the room reading a book. And you're just like, oh God, like just see the sights, go see a show, do something. And then she's like, well, I'm going to just do one. I'm going to do $1 or a quarter or whatever in this machine.
The nickel.
A nickel. Sorry, yes, he gets a nickel.
And he's mad. It's
Yeah.
1959, but it's still a nickel. You just got a free trip, dude.
Yeah, and it's that thing of like, obviously this is about penny pinching and stuff. And his opinion of it is, because you're just throwing money away. You might just throw it out the window because you're not even buying anything for it. You don't get anything for it. It's just waste. And then some dude gives him $1 to put into a machine. Some drunk guy comes and he puts it in and he gets a payout. And I had a question about this. Like, we've seen episodes where fate intervenes. Sort of like there's a character that is fate, but there's no supernatural intervention here, is there? That isn't like a magic dollar. That person. It's all just a coincidence that he then wins. And so he's like, well, let's say I forget the call now, the Browns or whatever. It's like, we don't fall for that nonsense. This money's coming back to the room with us. Like we're not going to put it back into the machine. And it's just this curmudgeon sort of like attitude. So I'm like, well, I don't like you now. So when you get your inevitable fall, and it is inevitable from what's going on, like I'm not going to have sympathy for you then either. Like and so it's a weird character setup where I'm like, well, I don't like this person at any point. So should I not feel something for this person? Should you give me a backstory as to why? At least, give me something as to why he is this way, or why he's so reluctant to gamble. Is there something like, it's in his family, like his dad's, his father was a gambler and it ruined his family or something. I don't know why I should care other than gambling is bad. Like that's it.
Yeah, that's the point. Is gambling is bad, but I'm not bothered by. I mean, he is certainly unlikable. I'm not bothered by how unlikable he is. I like unlikable characters, and I sometimes feel exactly as you do, but other times I feel like, why do we always have to have an identifiable character? But my point would be that the moral argument that, see, look how bad gambling is. It pulled in this guy who doesn't want to gamble, and once he did, he just caught the fever, and he was sucked in. That argument would be much stronger if you'd be like, and it's not like this fever only strikes curmudgeon-y, horrible people. It can kill, perfectly fine people who don't want to gamble. So I think the moral argument, the theme of the episode would be better if you could identify with him.
Yeah, I agree. There are certain episodes where you can have those sort of characters, the dislikable characters, and I think we've had a few of those in the past. Where you're like, yeah, no, it's fine, it works. But in this case, like you're supposed to feel that the fall of this person is, it's supposed to be a sympathetic journey, and it's not, because I'm sort of like, yeah, screw you, I don't really care. I feel for his wife, but then by the end of it, I'm like, well, actually, if he's got life insurance, then actually, like, she's good. Like, she can enjoy the rest of her Vegas vacation. So I don't know. It felt like again, the message is fine. I get it, and his, I like the fact that they make him make excuses. Where he's like, well, this money, it's tainted. We can't. I'm gonna, and I know I'm not going to win anymore, so I'm just going to go and put it back into a machine. I'm going to, but I'm thinking the same, going like, I get why he's having an excuse, but his wife could come back and go, no, let's go spend it, go buy it, let's go buy a meat. Let's go, if it's tainted, we'll do something good with it then.
Right.
But I like the fact he has the excuse of saying like, no, I can't have this in there. I've got to go get rid of it. And also it's not his money because technically he hasn't spent $1 yet. Like he was given the $1, so it's not a waste. So I like the fact that setup works to get him back to the machine. And that's obviously where the fever really kicks in, and they're sort of cashing checks and all this other stuff. So, and for those that listen, if you've never check, it's a piece of paper that you'd write money on, and then people an amount on, and people give you money on that on credit. It comes from your bank account.
And when you say money, you mean paper and coins. They didn't have plastic cards and computers with balances back then.
Yeah. So yeah, if anything, that was one of the biggest interesting things for me of this is watching a casino in 50. Granted, it's not a big set; it's not going to be an elaborate set, and I'm pretty sure Vegas was already quite elaborate by this point. But I like the fact that basically the slot machines, they just take money, so there's no chips or anything involved in any of this. It's like you said, no credit cards; it's pure coinage, and they're all just sat on a table, like they're arranged, but they're still like a half-size thing on a table. Playing. And obviously nowadays they're like full standing machines, and they've got the whole thing. So it was interesting to see like a
Old-fashioned slot
yeah,
machines.
yeah, like a time capsule of that era as well, which I thought was quite cool. But yeah, so that bit was all right, but the rest of it felt fell a bit flat, to be honest.
Yeah, and again, I'm sympathetic toward gambling addiction and addiction in general. I think that there's a version of that that's not as overdone as this, or that comparatively uses that as a metaphor and goes into the possessive slot machine thing. Again, I find myself, then this is a theme of certainly the last few episodes, where I find myself thinking that the ancillary characters or secondary characters are more interesting.
Yes.
We don't know, like, why did Flora marry this horrible curmudgeon guy? And when she is trying to get him away from the slot machine, she's smiling as he turns to her, and I find myself so sympathizing with her, trying to put on a brave face and not antagonize him, and with that smile, make it seem as if, come on, Franklin, it's okay to come back to the room. That sort of like appeal to the addict.
Yes.
I identify with her a lot in that moment. Same thing. Well, not the same thing. I don't identify with the casino workers. But you get these like two lines of dialogue, other than the two of them, where the casino workers are looking on as he's been playing the slot machine for like 5 hours straight, and they say like, "Boy, when it gets one of them the fever, like it really sucks them in," and they're just completely amoral about it. Which obviously is, I guess it's certainly condemning Las Vegas and the gambling industry. But I found myself thinking like, that I want to see more of that. Don't just give me that little snippet. I want to see a scene with them.
Yeah, that's interesting because again, it's that thing of like this is our everyday. Like we've seen this day in day out, and it's our job, and we've sort of normalized that behavior to see this. So it's nothing, but it's ruining this guy. Like he's literally, I think like he's giving the money he is cashing in to get the change. Is like their savings and all this other stuff. So it is interesting to sort of see that. Like I say, there's no sort of like well, he needs to be cut off. Like they're not intervening. They're just like no, we're happy with that. We'll empty it later on, and we'll be happy with that. So yeah, that bit's interesting.
Ironically, these days, all the casinos that I've ever been to have somebody on staff who intervenes if somebody is showing clear signs of addiction and kind of going crazy like this. And in fact, you can tell staff members, and they have, now, of course, it's all PR, right? But I mean, there's all signs of like, got a problem with gambling addiction. Here's a toll-free number. And they don't want to be sued by this. I'm sure none of that was the case in 1959, but it's hard for me to my encounters with gambling have not been cutthroat. And in fact, the casino closest to me, we have gambling everywhere in America now. In fact, like the lottery and all of this, there's a moral question of whether states are taking advantage of poor people,
Yes.
But I mean, my experience with gambling, is not this sort of like, there's certainly a real thing of gambling addiction, but one of the closest casinos to me is owned by the employees, and they get stock in the casino for working there as a bonus. So, it's like, yeah, maybe gambling has this problem, but it's not, demonic slot machines.
No, that's a story we're going to tell at some point, though. Yeah. Final thoughts though for me is, like you say, I agree with everything. It feels like moralizing from a different period. It's ham-fisted. I don't sort of sympathise with the main protagonist, and I feel that the ending is a little silly. And so again, this is another episode where I'm like, yeah, it generally falls flat for me, but there's something that could have been there, which is a bit of a shame. So, but yeah, any final thoughts, Julian, before we move on?
No, I mean, there's a version of this that would be good, but I mean,
Yeah.
I found myself really this episode dragged
Yeah,
for me.
it does. Yeah. Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting. As always, we really appreciate it. And we'll hopefully hear you be listening to us on the next episode.